What's up, guys, and welcome back to J. Randall Uncensored. Today, guys, I want to speak about a story from my personal life. It's a story about how the words of a complete stranger totally changed the course of my life. Now, to tell this story, I gotta go all the way back to 5th grade, right? And during my 5th grade experience, during my elementary school experience, I was heavily bullied. That's where this starts off. Yeah, I was bullied severely, and it was bad. I mean, it was to the point where I did not like going to school. I hated it. My learning experience during that time of my life was filled with anxiety, as I'm sure a lot of guys can relate to. My family had just moved from California only a few years ago, and when I was back in California, I was homeschooled. So I wasn't used to being around a large group of kids. It was a complete different experience. It was like a shock to the system having to move to Florida and go to the public school system. And I was very different. The way I acted was different than the kids. I was not accustomed to that environment, and I was bullied for it. And I was also short and very skinny. And so I was a prime target for bullying. You're different, you're short, you're skinny. I mean, now I'm over 6 foot, so, I didn't hit my growth spurt yet, but of course, during that time, as a lot of guys can relate to, you're a target, man. And you develop ways to survive in that environment when you're bullied heavily. I mean, I did not like going to school, bro. Like, it got to the point where school was just filled with so much anxiety because I would always anticipate being messed with, being called names, just being harassed. And it wasn't a great time for me. So I naturally developed ways to become invisible. That was the best survival mechanism I could come up with. I found ways to, just blend into the background where no one would notice me. I'm silent. I never talked. I never raised my hand. I always try to sit at the back of the class. Closed off body language, silent. But one of the major things that I use as a tool to avoid conflict was that I never looked people in the eye. I would always look down at the ground. Because looking down at the ground would avoid eye contact and nobody would be able to, directly interact with me if I did that. So over, 4 to 5 years of this behavior, I instilled a really bad habit of just always looking down at the ground. Even when I walked, always stared down, never looked straight ahead, never made eye contact with people. So here's where the life-changing event comes into play. I am in 5th grade, and I'm staying late after school to do some extra credit project. And so everybody else has already gone home. Now I'm finally leaving for the day and I'm walking home. And I am doing my usual bad habit of staring at the ground as I walk. And I'm walking down the path and I hear a voice call out to me. It's a man's voice, deep and very loud. And he says, "Young man." And I know he's talking to me because I'm the only one there. And I look over at the house next to me. And there's an older gentleman there. I'll never forget. It was a black guy, had to be in his 50s, 60s because he had a beard and hair, and it was a lot of white, a lot of gray, but it looked more white. And he called out to me and he said, "Young man, never walk with your head down. Always keep your head up." And then he started demonstrating to me and he said, "Chest out, shoulders back, head straight." Then it was like, "All right, young man, get home safe." Now, to you listening, that might not seem very significant. But to me, at least at that point in my life, I had never been called out directly for this bad habit or insecurity that I had been developing for the last couple of years. No one had ever directly called me out on it. And I realized for the first time that my lack of confidence was apparent to people. And I was like, wow, man, I must be coming off really bad. Like, I'd never really looked at it from that perspective. People can see how insecure I am. And I remember I walked to the end of the block in the way that he wanted me to, because I didn't want him to call me out again. So I made sure to be, very aware of not looking down and head straight, shoulders back, just like he said. And I made it to the end of the street. And I remember how uncomfortable it felt to be looking dead ahead at the cars, at the trees, at everything moving, because I was just so used to looking at the ground. And I made a decision right then and there that I was going to train myself out of that bad habit. And so from that point on, no matter where I was, anytime I would catch myself looking at the ground, just, doing my bad habit, I would always just snap out of it, assume the posture that he told me, and keep walking from there. Now, it took me a while to actually, get to the point where I wasn't doing it anymore, because I would naturally just keep looking at the ground, and then I'd have to be very aware of what I was doing and snap out of it. But after a while of that process, I was able to train myself out of that bad habit. But it's even more than just that. That man calling me out set me on the path of actually fixing my problem, my insecurity. I had to go to the source of the problem, and I realized, yeah, I'm this way because I get bullied and I'm giving into it. I'm getting bullied and I'm allowing it to change me. Because I'm telling you, prior to coming to Florida, I was an extremely outgoing kid back in California. I was outgoing, I was always talking, very extroverted type personality. And coming to Florida, experiencing the bullying really closed me off, man, in a way that I completely transformed from that outgoing kid to this very closed off, reserved, shy, timid person. It didn't feel natural. It felt like I was being boxed in. The person I really was afraid to show itself, because then I'd be visible and more susceptible to bullying. And I realized I hated that. And I needed to change that. But it wasn't until he called me out that I felt the drive to change my situation. Me no longer looking at the ground, was just one thing. From then on, I started working out, because I realized, I can't just keep getting bullied. So I started working out, putting on muscle. I would look up fight videos, right? With the instructors on YouTube, learning how to defend myself. I say all that to say that the words of a complete stranger, just talking to a young man he doesn't know, he has no clue to this day, how much impact he had, right? He has no clue, but the words of a complete stranger set me on a whole new path in life. And I think back to that, and I wonder, what if he didn't say anything? What if he just kept to himself, noticed the flaw or the insecurity in this young man, but he just let him go on his way? I'm not related to him. I don't know anything about him. That's not my problem. The few sentences he said to me changed my entire life. So I say all that to say that if you see a young man, or just a person in general, it could even be a young woman, or even an older man, a person in general, and you feel as though that your words could help them, say it, man. Because a lot of times we feel as though, they don't want to hear that from me, or, man, who am I to tell them that, or, bro, they got it, or they'll figure it out. You don't know that. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they don't got it. And yeah, it might not be your responsibility, but why not try to help somebody if you feel as though you have advice to give? It doesn't have to be a long, sit down meeting, just a few words. You have no idea what that could do for somebody. Because I think back and I imagine, what if he didn't say anything? How long would I have stayed that insecure young man? How many more years before I actually, felt the confidence or felt the urge to change my situation? And how would that impact my future down the line? Because I wouldn't have gotten to the relationships I did because my confidence wasn't right. My whole life the path in life would have been completely different. The experiences I've had would have been completely different had I stayed that individual for even a few months longer or a year longer. And I am forever grateful for that guy. I don't know who he is. I don't know. I don't know his name. I don't even know where he's at to this day. I don't even know if he's still alive. But a complete stranger saw the need to speak into a young man's life that day. And I am forever changed. I'm a very confident individual now. I broke free. I am outgoing the way I used to be. I have the confidence to start a YouTube channel, multiple YouTube channels, speak my mind. I'm bold. I would completely 1000% different than the young man I used to be. It's night and day. And that journey started from a stranger on his porch telling a young man to keep his head up. So, guys, if you have something to say, you see a young person or anybody, and you think your words can actually help them, don't minimize the impact you think you can have, because you never know just how impactful those words can be. So that's all for this one, guys. If you got value from it, please go ahead and leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, guys, take it easy.